Times, welcome back to the top 64 albums of all time in my life, counting down, and we're into the top 20, so this is getting pretty exciting. My son Julius this morning tweeted that he was going away and putting together some sort of Spotify playlist, I guess it was, and that his tastes were all over the place. I think he called it a shit shower of genres and cultures, and my dad's to blame. His musical taste is all over the place. I said, well, yeah, it's what we call eclectic, Julius. Eclectic is the good way to be. And as if proof were required, I know to most people it sounds pretty white, middle-aged, middle-class, classic rock sort of stuff, but today's selection is another one, five albums from four different decades. So I guess this is showing the sort of breadth of the stuff as well. Yeah, so the first one we're going to go to 1966, the year that Wednesday almost won the FA Cup, and I'm going to show you another one of this guy's albums, so Bob Dylan, this third one in this countdown. Again, apologies because I didn't have a Bob Dylan album until I was an older man, so whether you're thinking, oh, this is a guy to get into when you're old, this guy was the troubadour. He was the poster boy of the young people of America in the 1960s. This came out in '66, so the Beatles' heyday. The Beatles were going crazy in the States. He was like the American Beatles. I guess you could argue the Beach Boys were a bit like the American Beatles. I'm trying to think who else there was around at the time, but McCartney saw the Beach Boys as the main opposition, if you like. Lennon saw Dylan as the main guy, partly because of the lyrics and the ease of which he put together poetry and songs and all the rest of it. So this album's called Blonde on Blonde, and it's intriguing. Even the album cover's intriguing because you've got this sort of blurred image taken somewhere in New York City of Dylan just wandering around in the winter streets, and the whole feel of the album's a little bit blurred. You're not quite sure what he's talking about, what he's referring to. So again, a bit like Joni Mitchell last week, quite like that sort of that feel. This is a bit more about relationships as well. So the album lyrics are a bit more about relationships rather than the early Dylan stuff, which had a political or protest feel to it, which I didn't really care for. Double album back in the 60s, and I don't think there were many of those in the mid-60s, and every track's more or less seen as a standout track. And I think together with Desire, Blood on the Tracks, Blonde on Blonde is a last of the big three Dylan albums, and he's released a lot since that time. So I'm going to pick out a pretty odd track called Your Leopard Skin Pillbox Hat as my standout track. Fantastic lyrics, really taking a swing at a woman who must have jilted him. A lot of people did. It appeared in his songs. And he said about the next guy who went out with he's only going out with you for your marvellous leopard skin pillbox hat. It's also got a fantastic lyric. It's about as feasible as balancing a mattress on a bottle of wine, which, I tend to conjure up that image fairly easily, and it sounds pretty impossible to me. So, yeah, I've been listening to music now for about 50 years. And I guess you've got to circle back and find some classic albums, and this is one of them, 1966, Dylan's Blonde on Blonde, absolute fantastic album, and not a bad place to start if you're new into Dylan. Okay, so I'm going to go to 1970 next, and so that's my sort of familiar stamping ground. I'm 14 years old, you've probably heard this to death now. Ask me my favourite band, certainly then, you'd probably get free ELP Jethro Tull. Ask me my favourite band 50 years later, we'd probably get still free in the top three, probably get Rory Gallagher and any number of other bands probably going to fit that other place, probably a classic rock band, Deep Purple or ELP, maybe even still Arctic Monkeys, one of these types of bands. 1970. So the only free album I've got, let's see if I can get that in shot. Only 3 album I've got in the countdown, and I could have had about 4. And I just think for non-Free fans, it's probably going to get pretty boring. Is that? Yeah, get it in focus. So a little bit about Free. They were formed in 1968. They split in 1973. The guitarist Paul Kossoff, son of David Kossoff, died of pulmonary. What's that thing where you get a blood clot when you're flying on a plane? Anyway, a blood clot went to his lungs, I believe, from his leg. He was heavily on drugs at the time, and this was the demise of the Free when they were trying to hold it together with Paul Kossoff. He was the lead guitarist and certainly a big part of the sound of Free. Paul Rodgers and Simon Kirke went on to form Bad Company. Paul Rodgers, in my opinion, miles ahead the best male singer ever lived. Still is living, of course, and still got that voice at the age of 70 odd or 60 odd, whatever age he is. And Andy Fraser, I'm going to say a little bit about Andy Fraser. My favourite bass player, died a few years ago at the age of 62. Absolutely amazing bass player, and one of those like Jack Bruce who doesn't just play along with the beat of the song and sort of match the drummer, but goes off on these amazing bass runs. And you've only to listen to Ride on Pony or Mr. Big, especially Mr. Big live on the Free live album to see what an amazing bass player he was. Now, back to the sort of early days of Free, 1968. I just wrote the ages of the band down. So let's think about this. Rodgers and Kirke are both 18. Kossoff is 17. And Andy Fraser is 15 when they get together as a band with Alex Corner sort of providing a sort of fatherly figure there. They put their first album together in 1968. It was released in 69. It's called Tons of Sobs. If you like your blues guitar, if you like raw blues and fantastic singing, instrumentalism, but passion in the stuff, get a hold of Tons of Sobs. Then released an album called Free, a bit more mellow, but they're starting to hit their stride. And in 1970, I think it would be, they released not Tons of Sobs, Fire and Water. Sorry, and on Fire and Water is probably the album. The track that you've heard, the most famous track by Free, is called All Right Now. Oh, by the way, I've got to mention this. The other person whose favourite band is Free is Tony Blair. Which rather sucks the whole thing down, in my opinion. But again, it shows you the sort of appeal that Free had for a lot of bands. He also liked King Crimson, so similar musical taste to the ones I had. So most people really liked All Right Now. It really put them on the map. And in fact, that was part of their downfall. So 1970, they also released this album, which is called Highway. And they went for a rather subdued album cover, just two colours, brown and blue as well as white, and then on the back just a very simple approach. 10 tracks, I think, there are on this album. Another picture of the band, not much else. Single cover, no gatefold sleeves or anything like that. But and they were really going to express themselves in a sort of more melodic, sonic way, a sort of more acoustic feel to the thing. So I don't know if you've heard of any of these tracks. The Stealer is probably the most well-known of the tracks on here. Ride on Pony, if you know Free. And my standout track, Soon I Will Be Gone. So melancholy, so sad, eerily sad, and lots of minor keys played in there. And an outro solo by Kossoff, which is just makes you cry. My introduction to Free was not All Right Now, although I pretty well got into that because everybody in discos in the early 70s. But my first knowledge of this band was that album I talked to you about last week called LP, and the Free track on LP was called The Highway Song, and The Highway Song is the first track on this album. So with that in mind, I thought this is a great band, sounds fantastic, real rhythm to it, great singer. I went out and bought this album, Highway, in 1970, in London. Actually, with a friend of mine, we went to see my auntie in London, stayed there for a week. He bought a budgie album, I bought a free album, and sort of set us on our way ever since. So if you like free, you've ever heard them for all right now, and you want a more mellow side of them, get into this. I think they released Heartbreaker after this, but without Kossoff really started to go down as a band, and lots of infighting and sadness about how the whole thing had turned out. So and Bad Company kicked out of there, so Rogers and Kirk made a pretty good fist of carrying on with a harder edge free sound, I think. So that's Highway 1970, one of real favourite albums. In fact, we're into the top 20 now. I was just thinking, what's the top 20 mean? It means my top 20 favourite albums, obviously, but these are albums that, if I had it stolen or I lost it or it got damaged, I would immediately go out and buy it again. These are how good these albums are to me. So there you go. I'm going to talk now about somebody a lot more modern for you younger people about time too. And you probably know about the 27 Club. I don't know if it's called that, but there's a number of people who died at the age 27, almost spookily. I've made a quick list of these. So Jimi Hendrix died at 27, Janis Joplin died at 27, Kurt Cobain, you'll heard of, died at 27, as did Brian Jones, the Rolling Stones, as did Jim Morrison, allegedly. Not quite sure where he went and what happened, but passed away at 27. Kossoff died at 25, so not quite in the club. And the other person who died at 27, and almost more tragic than the others, and in fact more tragic to me because I didn't really know, I didn't really see Hendrix as he's pumped, didn't really know about Janis Joplin, didn't sort of track their careers or anything like that, but certainly with this person here, 2 albums. This is the better of the 2. The other one's pretty good as well, called Frank. But Back to Black by Amy Winehouse, in my opinion, certainly more than gets its way into the top 20. I mean, it's partly due to her, and it's partly due to Mark Ronson, I would say, who produced this and really brought out the best of the tracks and the way they could sound, and the way that the stuff that she was searching for as a sound. I mean, and his thoughts on Amy Winehouse what a waste, what a loser, what an idiot on stage, blah blah. But you've got to admire the skill. You've got to admire the fortitude and the ability to get up on stage and just do a thing. And I would say, along with Ella Fitzgerald and a couple of others, Aretha Franklin demonstrates control over the voice and control over the song. And even when she's drunk, or even when she sort of doesn't feel like it, then the timing of able to keep a beat while rolling around to something else, and the rest of the band going off and doing something, able to keep a beat on the song is absolutely phenomenal. So what a shame. Picking a standout track off this album is really difficult because they, I'm not saying they're all good, but if you listen to the opening thing, you probably know these tracks better than I do. Track 1, Rehab. Track 2, You Know I'm No Good. Track 3, Me and Mr. Jones, another fantastic track. 4, Just Friends, pretty strong track. 5, Back to Black. So one of the major songs that put her on the map. And my favourite, Love Is a Losing Game. Absolutely beautiful songwriting, fantastic sort of blues jazz feel to it. And if you were lucky enough to get this deluxe version of this CD, you would be treated on the back to the Love Is a Losing Game original demo, which is on here as a bonus track sort of thing with Valerie and a few others, and really shows her mastery of keeping this thing almost a cappella version of that. So yeah, Love Is a Losing Game, my favourite standout track on here. What a shame, what a loss. Interesting to know what she'd be doing now. Okay, that was 2006. I'm going to skip forward 3 years to 2009, and we go Sheffield again, and a person we've seen before, but this time a different album, and this one's called True Love's Gutter. I've forgotten what it was called then. So True Love's Gutter by Richard Hawley, 2009. I'm not going to say a lot about Richard Hawley, except I love the guy. He's just got a voice like salted caramel. He's a great songwriter, great on stage as well. Very humble, very knowledgeable about the music and where it all came from and what he's trying to do with his music. Fought off a lot of demons in his life, mostly self-inflicted, but yeah, really honest, humble guy. And you know, I could bang on about the tracks on this album because they're really some of my favourites of Hawley. So I've got As the Dawn Breaks, Open Up Your Door, Ashes on the Fire, Soldier On, For Your Lover, Give Some Time, absolutely fantastic song. Don't You Cry. So slower, softer, more romantic songs. But my favourite, my standout track is probably, if I ever do another video of my favourite tracks of all time, favourite singles of all time, or albums that got just an amazing track on, you want to get it despite what the rest of the album may be, is for one track on here. It's called Remorse Code. And knowing me with lyrics, I just love the fact that he's taken a word like Morse code and then spun it into this thing about remorse code, being sad about what's happened. Remorse Code is such a favourite of mine that I had to invest in this sort of 12-inch EP. I think that's what they still call nowadays, of False Lights from the Land. Fantastic LP. It's got Remorse Code, all about 10 minutes of it. Shallow Brown, another fantastic song. Ellen Van in Tragedy, and There's a Storm Coming, which I don't think is on any other Richard Hawley album. Beautiful feel to it. Absolutely amazing production. Uber deep bass on the drum, the bass drum and stuff. Just fantastic. What with his voice? I mean, just amazing. So I'm not saying that this is the only track on the album. It's definitely not. But this is my standout track, and probably standout track whole 64 albums I'm going to show you. So that's Richard Hawley, Captain of Sheffield, 2009. So last one, 2014. So that gives us our 4 different decades. And again, this guy's been in the rundown earlier on. Completely different album. And that was Odelay when he was 1994, 5, 6, 1996, I think. This is him in 2014, still, in my opinion, at the top of his game, but doing something completely different. A lot of pundits saying, what's happened to Beck? He's gone really mellow, he's gone really musical, and he's just gone for the sort of production values. It's true that this album is just like such a beautiful thing to listen to. Every track is soothing, every track is really nice, really well played. He had an album out a few years earlier than this, which was his breakup album called Sea Change. Again, a fantastic album by this guy. Could have had that easily over that in '64. This is a similar sort of feel to it, more of a melancholy feel. He had the same musicians back on Sea Change as he did for this one, and he's not afraid to experiment. He's not afraid to go and do something different. Somebody described this as a fat analog sunrise, and I would say, yeah, that's pretty on the money. A sort of slightly crackly vinyl, beautiful emergence of waking up in California. I imagine that's what it's like. Get headphones on and play this, and I'd like to promise you wouldn't be disappointed. Bizarrely, this was voted the best rock album of 2015, the Grammy Awards, I think it was. It's not a rock album. It's an ambient, beautiful, soothing piece of music album. But having said that, I know that Jethro Tull, what was the album? I can't remember the album now. I think it was in the 90s. They were given a Grammy for the best heavy metal album of the year by the Grammys, and it certainly wasn't heavy metal. I remember them being quite amused by the fact that they'd got anywhere with this album of theirs. But anyway, so back to here. Best album 2015 in the Grammys. In my view, one of the best albums of the last 10 years. It gets to number 16 on my list. And yeah, you wouldn't be disappointed if you gave that a spin. All right, I think that's it. We're going to be in the top 15 next. There's only 3 countdowns to go. I said earlier I'm going to do 5 for the 15 through 10, and then probably take them in 2s and 3s, and give the last 5, my top 5, individual run-throughs, shorter than this one, obviously. Okay, hope to see you next time. Bye for now.